Allie. Join me in these Cascading Hearts Earrings featuring some right angle weave and Potomac crystals. Remember, if you need any supplies, go ahead and look below the video in the description to shop with us online. So to get started with this heart design, it is a simple right angle weave. You can choose to do each heart individually. You can also choose to make more hearts, sew them together. We have other videos on that as well. I'm going to be demonstrating how to get the heart form with right angle weave while doing the bottom or the largest heart. I'll show how to do the connection point, and then you'll come back and watch how to do the heart again. As you do it with smaller beads, it's a little bit harder to see when it comes to recording. So that's why I want to concentrate on the larger bead. We're starting at the bottom. The first thing that I'm going to have you do is use some size 6 green thread, and we are adding onto our thread 4mm crystals. Each heart is going to consist of 19 crystals. Starting with these 4mm, I'm going to bring them down to the base of my thread, and I'm going to tie a knot in this thread. There's also a 2-needle method if this gets a little bit confusing for you that you can do as well. And we'll put links to help you with some of that right angle weave start at the bottom as well too. So I have that tied into a nice right angle weave unit. Those 4 beads now are established that we have 2 that sit with the holes going horizontal, 2 with holes on the vertical. That's our first right angle unit. I'm going to take my needle and thread through the next one of the next beads, and then I'm going to exit through my top bead. The top bead that I'm looking at is going to be the bead that the hole sits on that horizontal. And we're going to make a second right angle weave unit above it. So we have 4 beads on. We're going to add 3 more beads. Adding 3 more of these 4mm beads, I'm going to sew into the opposite side of the 4mm that my thread is currently coming out of. What that's going to do is to create, yet again, another little right angle weave. So I have that next unit of 4. And what I want to do is get over to the right side of this unit. We have 1 unit here. We're going to create 3 units next. So they're going to sit 3 units that are going to line up next to one another. So we have the single bottom unit, and now we're going to get 3 units right across the middle here. To do that, I'm going to go up through the bead that sits on the left. I'm going to tighten it up by going up through the bead that sits on the top. So I'm reinforcing, taking a second strand through those beads. And now what I'm going to do is come down through the bead that sits on the right-hand side. So if you just watched the how to increase rows in your right angle weave, this is basically like increasing rows and creating another one. I'm going to add 3 more beads. At this point, again, your needle should be coming out of that second right angle weave unit. Here's my first, here's my second, and my thread is coming out to the bottom right bead, the bead that sits with the hole on the lateral. 3 more beads get added, and I'm going to sew back into the bead that my thread is coming out of. Tighten that up so that just sits kind of there. And now what I'm going to do is reinforce that, making it a little bit tighter, going back through that whole right angle unit. When you get to the top of this right angle unit, right there, that bead that sits on the top, I want you to stop. What we do on the right, we're also going to do on the left. So we're going to go in and create 1 more unit on top of this unit on the right-hand side. So our second unit, thread was coming out the bottom on the right. The third unit that we just created, the thread's going to come out the top on the left. I want to add 3 more beads, and I'm going to sew back into that bead that my thread is currently coming out of. That's going to create another right angle unit. I'm going to reinforce this a little bit, taking my thread back up through all 3 of those beads. So we're going the whole way around that right angle unit. And this can be a little bit tricky. So if you need to, again, we'll put links to those other videos down below. And then also a nice thing to do is to go back, and if you need to watch some of the steps again, you can. So right now I'm done with these 2 stacked units on the right here. I need to get back to that middle second unit. So I'm sewing the whole way around here. And I want to get back to this middle unit number 2, that one right there. We originally were coming out the right hand bead. Now I want to do this exact same steps on that bead that's on the left. So to do so, I need to come down into that second unit, going down just right along that right angle weave unit. I need to sew over along the bottom because I'm circling like right angle weave and where the thread is coming through. And again, you can always slow down this video in the settings if you need to and watch where this thread pass is going right away. From here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So now I'm coming out the left hand bead, and the same thing that I did on the right is going to be done on the left. To simplify things and make it a little bit easier, I am going to flip my project over. So now once again, I'm working on the right side. So what was the right side now sits on the left, and that's completed. From here, I'm going to add another row of right angle weave to the right, adding 3 beads, sewing into the bottom of that 4mm crystal that my thread is coming out of. So you're always sewing into the opposite side. And then once again, I need to sew through the top. When I'm through the top here, I'm ready to add my next right angle weave unit above. So 1, 2, 3 beads, go into the opposite side of the bead that my thread is currently coming out of, and I have that other side of my heart completed. Now I'm going to reinforce going back through that right angle weave unit a little bit, going through all those beads. And what I'm going to do to kind of connect the heart together is I'm going to sew through, so you can see where my thread is going here. Remember that starter thread is just hanging out the bottom. Through the top here, I'm going to sew through that little V, the top of the heart. So I'm taking my thread and needle from the right hand side of the top right box, going through the top of that middle number 2 right angle unit. And then next we're going through the bead that's on the right side of the last box on the left. And what that does is just kind of makes that nice V section. From here, we're going to go around the edges and tighten it up a little bit more. Some people will choose to make their heart a little bit fatter and can go more right angle unit weaves and all of that. We're going to keep it nice and slender heart, more rounded in shape. What we're going to do now is pick up some 15 OC beads, and we're going to add 15 OC beads between all of our exterior beads in the base of this heart design. So to add these beads to the exterior, my 15 O's, I'm coming out of that last bead there that I connected with those 3, and you're simply going to pick up one 15O seed bead, sew into the next 4mm bead that sits on the exterior. Once again, pick up a 15O, sew through the next bead that sits on the interior. So I'm going the whole way around, or the exterior rather, connecting to all of those exterior beads. When you get here, again, which one's next? Add a 15, sew through the one that's next. Get down to the bottom here, add a 15, sew through the one that's next. So you're just basically connecting the dots here with your 15 OC beads and adding all those lines together. Add my next 15, you can see I'm at the bottom of the heart, and then I'll start to move up the heart. Okay, just kind of push that stop thread out of the way. And then same thing on this side here. We're going up through the heart, connecting all of those exterior beads. Just adding a 15O between each. The only exterior beads, so the only beads on the outside that do not have a seed bead between them are those 3 at the top. You can put seed beads between them, but honestly, it throws off the shape of the heart a little bit, so I prefer not to include them there. Plus, the way that we are stacking these right angle heart units, you do not need extra beads there. So when I get to the top here, I'm going to put my 15 O's between my top, And then once again, we're going to sew through those 3 beads again, connecting here at the top. So I'm sewing through the middle of my heart, and I'm sewing through the top left of that V section. And then I'm going to come out. At this point, if you want to, you can go in and you can create ear wires for it, kind of skip ahead in the video if you just want to do it one high. If you want to create and continue with these cascading hearts, we're going to get ready with some 2mm bicones in an alternate color. I just had to take mine out there and get that seed bead in that I missed while I was talking going around. Now we're good to go. And I am going to get ready with my 2mm bicones. So I'm switching sizes for that dramatic look of going from the larger to the smaller to the seed beads. So we're going 4 2mm and 11 seed beads. For the connection point, it's very, very simple. We just need to add the bottom of the next heart. Coming out of those beads in that 3 unit right there in the center of the V of the top of my heart, I'm going to add 1 15-0, 1 2mm crystal, and 1 15-0. I'm going to treat this as a right angle unit, circling around. There's my 3 beads, my bottom, my right side, my left side, and I'm adding these 3 beads as my top of that right angle unit. I'm going to sew into the right side of that box and connect that first bead there. From here, sew down through the bottom of that right angle weave unit, that center of your heart, then sew up through the left hand side, and then through the 15 and out through the crystal. Guess what? When we're out the crystal, it's the same exact technique now. So we're going in and we're adding 3 more beads to create our first right angle unit out of our 2mm. The first bead's already there that we just used at that connection point. I'm going to sew into the opposite side of that first bead, creating that right angle unit. I know that I need to get to the top of that unit to add my next right angle unit. So I'm going to go up through the right bead and to that bead that sits to the top. From here, I need to add my next right angle weave unit. That second one, 3 beads get added. And I'm going right into that bead from the opposite direction. From here, I'm going to go up through that left-hand bead. I'm going to flip it over to the right to make it easier for me to hold and sew. So what is now up through the right-hand bead. And then once again, I'm going to do 2 units to the right. The first unit is going to sit lateral with that second unit. 1, 2, and 3. Speeding through this because you can always go back and slow it down. I'm going to get to the top of that right angle unit that I just completed. And we're going to build 1 more unit on top of that. 3 more beads get added. And we build that second unit on top of the one we just created. Getting back to that middle second unit of the right angle weave, I'm going to go up through the right bead, through the top. I'm just circling around the right angle weave till I have the opportunity to get back to that unit. Here along the bottom, because I know I'm going to connect them anyway, I'm just going to scoot right over to the middle bead. So that's kind of a cheat rather than going the whole way around. Now I know I need to do the left-hand side. So I'm going to sew down, make sure I'm coming out to the bead on the left. Flip that piece over. So you should have 2 right angle units kind of stacked, one right next to another. And I'm going to flip that over. Once again, 1, 2, 3 beads get added to create that next right angle weave unit. Going up through the bead on the bottom, through the bead on the side. And I know I need to get to the bead on the top to create my next right angle unit. My next right angle unit here on the side uses the last 3 of those 19 2mm beads, and I sew around to the opposite here. Circle around, and now my second heart is completed. All I need to do now is go through those 3 beads in the center. First, I'm going to go around up to the top here based on where my thread's coming out. And I'm going to start to add my 15 OC beads. So here along the top, you can see it sits a little bit more open. 15s get added the whole way around. When I get down to the base here, I'm sewing through the 2, 2, 2, and then adding the 15s again as I get back to the top. When I get back to the top, I'm sewing directly through those 3 that create the V in the center, just like we did on the base heart. Once your thread is coming out of that center V after adding your 15 O's, so sewing right through that last crystal, right through those crystals in the center V without adding any extra little seed beads, I'm going to repeat what I did previously with the 2 millimeter, adding a 15, an 11, a 15, and then I'm going to sew down through the bead that's on the left of that V, since I'm coming out the bead that's on the right. I'm going to treat this as my next right angle weave unit. Sewing then down through that baseline crystal at the bottom of that V, up through the crystal that's on the right of the V, just like we did previously, again, through that 15O, and then out through the 11O CB. Just like I did with the heart now, I'm going to go through the 11O, creating, or through with the crystals, creating my right angle weave heart. Once I'm done with my right angle weave heart, having that 2 right angle weave units here, 2 there, 2 there, I'm going to connect them all just like I did with the crystals with 15 OC beads as well. So one more unit with tiny 11 OC beads is going to sit right at the top. Once you're finished going through and adding your 11O heart, you're going to want to come out of the top 11O. So the top 11O on the right and left side of the heart is what we're going to catch onto to put on our wire guard or our wire protector and 1 4mm bead before it. To lead up to that, I want you to grab 3 15O seed beads, 1 of your 4mm crystals, 1 of your wire guards or wire protectors. If you're not using a wire guard or wire protector, I would recommend using a soldered ring. I'm going to go ahead and actually pinch that together a little bit because I want to sit it together on top of my crystal. You can do that with your pliers too if you need to. Come down through the other side of the wire guard. Bring that down closer to the project. So back through the crystal as well. Once I'm out this crystal here, I'm going to sew and add 3 more 15s right after the crystal. I'm going to sew into the opposite 11OC bead. So going from the interior towards the exterior. That's going to get your top to sit the nicest. Because whatever way you're coming out of a bead on one side is the opposite way you want to go into the bead on the other, so it sits even. From here, I'm just going to sew back through the project a little bit. Going back and repeating a couple of those right angle weave stitches. And then I'm going to go in and do a knot, going through and underneath a bridge thread, tying it off and burning down the thread edges to get my beautiful cascading heart earrings. Thanks so much for joining me in these fun cascading heart earrings. Remember, you can alter these and make them what you want. You could even make it into a beautiful pendant using some bigger size crystals, or even link them together for a bracelet as well. As always, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads, as well as find the links to all the products as well as the video on our website in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next inspirational video.